How to use a phone. There we go. Okay, so welcome this afternoon. I understand, well, there are obviously still people upstairs, and so they'll be the latecomers if they want to be down here. I hope you all had a chance to grab one of those papers at the door. If you didn't, try and either grab one now or Jim might be kind enough to grab you one. So we're trying today to cover the same material that we did last week. And last week, we didn't get through it all in a timely way, so hopefully what we're hoping to do is start at the end and work our way back to the beginning and cover the same material, but do it in a better order. So, yeah. Does anyone else need a sheet? Jim's kindly gonna bring some around if anyone does. All right. All right, so there's 5 things I kind of want to cover this morning, and we'll try and wrap up. It is 11:35 now, so we'll try and be done by 1 o'clock. That'll be about 90 minutes. And as we get started here, what we're going to do again is just to start from the end and work our way back to the beginning. If you want a piece of paper, there's some handouts there, so please grab one for yourself. Again, we're going to cover the same material we did last week, but we'll do it in the opposite order just to try to cover everything well. All right, so let's maybe just pause for a moment as we all get settled, and I'll just share or offer up a prayer to God, and then we'll get into this. Father, thank you for the opportunity to be together this afternoon for an hour and a half or so. Thank you for all the people who are a part of River Park Church in various ways, for the passion, first of all, that they have for you, and for the way that you have made room for them here in our church and in our world. And God, we pray that we would more and more have your heart and grow in love and care for one another, for those who are very much like us, and for those who are different from us as well. Continue to guide and lead us as pastors and our council members as we take the responsibility to lead and guide our congregation together. And Lord, for many other leaders in many different areas too, may we always be near to you, hear from you, and do confidently and humbly what you call us to. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, so there's just a couple kind of housekeeping things about technology and other things. So I mentioned during the service this morning that we have a new website, that we are working for more integration with Planning Center Online. That's our church app, and so that's what we're using to schedule people to, for our membership database, for police checks, for building use calendar, for giving. So there's all kinds of things that we're hoping to do through that app that I'm not going to get into today. We're in the midst of upgrading our security system and Wi-Fi system, which is endlessly fascinating to me and endlessly tedious to people like my wife, and so I'm not going to spend too much time on that. In terms of our couple of things that we're wanting to do together, the Stampede Breakfast we've done for every year for a long time, but this year we're going to try to move breakfast into lunch. So we've got a meeting with the planning team this week, and the plan is to make that switch to Montreal-style smokies and hot dogs or burgers or something like that. And so probably the event will start set up at 10, lunch-ish at 11, and go until about 2 or 3. The Young Gen Pastor search team is beginning their search. We've had a couple applicants already, I think. 1 for sure, maybe 2. And it's been posted for about a week, so we hope to have a few more, and then the team will start obviously looking at those. Any number of other notes, but I just want to touch on one, which is that trying a few new initiatives for the young adults in our church. And so one is a media studio for some of the young adults. So we had I had a couple of the young adults in our church come to me and say, "Hey, Pastor Adrian, we talk about this Mosaic church, And we like that, but we feel like there's probably a lot of stories here at our church and people's experiences that we don't know. So, do you know people at our church, Pastor Adrian? And I said, yeah, I do. Could you maybe connect us with some of those people so we could hear their story and tell their story and share their story with other people? I said, yeah, I think I could do that. So there's a group of 3 of them right now, and they would like it to be more. But what we realized was that if one person has the camera and one person has the computer, then the work is going to bottleneck pretty quickly because it depends on that person being available. So council just approved 2 designated funds, one for this media studio to cover a computer and camera and microphones and whatever else for them, so that they can tell some of those stories and use the equipment here at the church and be able to tell stories from people in our congregation and other stories as we see fit. And so they've already interviewed one person and they're working on editing that story, but we're also going to try and get them to video that baptism that tentatively is scheduled for Saturday and that we hope will happen. So that's all in, that would be up to about 10,000. And the other thing is gym upgrades. So we've had this, we're under the gym right now, obviously. And we've got a number of young adults in our church that are very gifted in sports, basketball, volleyball, soccer, some of them. And so one of the things that we're looking at is, could we get some of the young adults in our church to coach and to teach like rec league sports here at our church? It'd be a good way for them to use their gifts, not just for themselves, but to serve others. And so that would require some gym updates to be able to actually have a facility that's usable by for a good purpose, not just for really kind of low-level stuff like we have now. So our some of you may not know because you don't always go in there, but our basketball net broke. And so right now we've got 2 kind of outdoor nets set up in the indoor gym. That's not okay from an insurance perspective or a host of other things. And so it works temporarily, but if we want to use that space better, we need to spend some money on it. So anyway, so where we're at again this morning is I want to go to some of our, as we get started here, focus on, or let me just pause for a minute. Are there any questions about any of that kind of just, I'm going to say random announcements? Okay, there's always time for more of that later. The focus, again, this morning, we're going to move through that agenda that you have in front of you from the back to the front. And so we'll start with the kind of external connections, and then we'll go into the internal structure, and we'll work back to personal understanding and stuff from there. So I'm going to just grab one of these because I want to make sure that I'm looking at what you're looking at. So on D there, after our church left the Christian Reformed Church, one of the things that council talked about was we wanted to pursue connections with different groups for different purposes. And so what we're looking at right now is 3 different kinds of connections. One would be a Reformed connection for the purpose of valuing and enjoying and maintaining our Reformed identity. The second one would be a Calgary connection, so wanting to connect with other churches here locally. And the third one is a Mosaic connection, so wanting to connect with other multicultural churches that are trying to leverage difference for strength. And there's going to be some regional limitations to that as well. But those are the 3 emphases, or the 3 focuses. So, excuse me. So when it comes to, as I said, we'll go from the bottom up here. So we'll start with the Mosaic connection. That work is really in its infancy, I would say. So River Park has a really beautiful story and a really interesting story, and obviously our story's not done. We have historically been a white Dutch church that's trying to expand and make room for lots more people. What Pastor Harrison and I have We'd love to find other examples. But a lot of other churches started as a different ethnic group and are trying to welcome everybody, which is it's the journey to the same point, but it's a very different starting place. So for example, there's a church in Vancouver that's started by a bunch of Chinese folks. And they're trying to be a multicultural church, but their starting point is very different, their structure is very different, their history is very different. But it would be fun to learn and grow with them and to find out what it is that we have in common, what we can work together with, and what that might look like. So there's also other, I'll say monocultural churches, whether that's white or black or whatever, who see the goodness of the vision that we have, which is really hopefully the vision of the kingdom of God, and they want to learn and grow, whether that's here in Calgary or other places. So right now, there's not a whole lot to report. There's nothing actively happening, but it remains a priority and a hope. And right now, that work is, I would not even say work, like there's no big movement, but right now the who's doing it is Pastor Harrison and myself, trying to make some of those connections with other church leaders. Second, the Calgary connection. What we'll see when we get to it later is that the historic model for a church is that churches connect with other churches and then talk about church things. The biggest one being worship, right? That's the thing that every church does, regardless of their structure, regardless of other things. But there's also a lot of value in churches connecting with other not-for-profits, especially locally. River Park has this beautiful history where we've started things that was sunshine, that became radiance. We started the pregnancy center. We started a lot of good initiatives in our city. And then over the years, we've lost touch with them or lost track of them. Or actually, one of the beautiful things is what we started as a congregation, that group, that organization got really good at, and now they do better than we could as a church. And so the value of having connections in Calgary is not only to have connections with other churches, but to learn from and with some of these other nonprofits and organizations that are doing really good work, not because we need to take it over, we couldn't, but because we can learn from them and learn with them and partner with them in some new ways for God's kingdom. So that's, again, in its infancy, that's what's been going on, or that's what we have this history, and what's been going on again is that we're trying to build or renew some of those connections that we've had either stronger in the past or that we'd like to have. Then the Reformed connection. This one is the most fully formed, and so you've got a paragraph there in italics. The River Park is sending Paul Verhoef as a delegate, as a quote-unquote observer church delegate. That's a category that Toward Canada folks have. So they're having a board and working retreat in Ancaster, Ontario in June. And what that says is that the purpose of this retreat is to further define our structure, calling, culture, and covenants. That is, what exactly is God saying to us? How will we live together? They already had something in November that was inspiring, and they wrote a 16-page draft document. And so they have a small team working on that document to ensure its consistency, etc. Another purpose of this retreat is to build stronger relationships and to think through answering questions that churches are bringing. So that's their language in italics. We're sending Paul because we're wanting to know what's going on there, observe, and learn more. Many of those churches, I think almost all of those churches, are churches who have left the Christian Reformed Church. The second thing to say is that the vast majority of them are churches that are in Ontario. And so there are a few in BC. I think there's one or two in Alberta, but it's a really Ontario-centric group, or Ontario-heavy group. That's not by design, like they're not trying to be exclusive, but that's just who is in the room. And so it's also one of the considerations for us as a church to say, right, we would like to have a connection with other Reformed communities, but that connection is the Toward Canada connection, at least right now, doesn't seem to be a very strong, like, local connection. So can we send somebody to Ancaster or to Ontario every year for meetings? Sure, but that's going to have a pretty limited effect on the local life of our community together. So Any questions about any of that? Debbie's got one, and then
Well, I don't
John.
have a question, I have a comment.
Comment, yeah.
To be fair, they are trying to have a more Western connection, and they are seeking that out as well.
Yeah, absolutely. To be fair, the Toward Canada folks are trying to have a more Western Canada connection and seeking that out. I'm just repeating it because for the recording.
Yeah.
John.
So I guess these are not mutually
exclusive.
correct.
But what will determine which way we go? Are there any guideposts or timelines or whatever?
Yeah, no, first of all, these are not mutually exclusive. Last week when we talked about this, one of the things that came up was the timeline, right? And people saying, we've been working on this vision for like 10 or 15 years. I want to strongly and gently disagree with that. From my view, we've been working on this vision for a few months, interspersed with years of challenges and difficulty and turmoil. Yes, we've had this vision for, I think, 10 years, but we have been focusing on all kinds of other things and not focusing the best of our energy and resources on this vision for quite some time, right? Until now, until whatever it was, March 6th. So as much as we would like to be much further ahead in pursuing our vision than we are where we are. And the energy the like emotional energy that we've put in and the actual work that we've done, from my view, are not the same, right? We've had a lot of emotional energy in this direction for a long time, but the actual work and the effort that we've put in has not been directed in this area consistently for quite some time. So in the area of like pursuing connections with Reformed churches, pursuing connections with Calvary ministries, pursuing connections with Mosaic churches, in those kinds of areas, right? Instead, we spent a year talking about human sexuality. We spent 2 years talking about disaffiliation from the Christian Reformed Church. Those things take up a whole lot of energy and time, and that's time and energy that council and our church members are not spending focused on these other things. So anyway, that's not an answer to John's question. Number one, these things are not mutually exclusive. One of the things that I've suggested to council personally is that we don't need a denomination per se. We don't need one place to belong, a one-stop shop that does everything for us. First of all, I don't think that exists. But second of all, that's not how most of us function in our day-to-day lives. And I'll give you a stupid example. Nobody goes to just one grocery store, right? Like, you might have a membership at Costco, but if Costco told you you can't shop anywhere else, you'd probably cancel your membership at Costco and just still go to Safeway and Superstore and save on foods. They're so expensive though. Right, but this is, and there's reasons, right? So we shop at Costco because we want to save money and buy in bulk. We shop at Superstore for a lot of our basic day-to-day necessities because they're reasonably priced and we can buy the quantity that we want. And I also shop at Safeway because it's one turn away from my house. And so sometimes when I'm on my way home, I realize that we haven't bought something and I just stop and get that and then carry on. There's totally different reasons why you shop at different grocery stores for different reasons. And the same thing is true when it comes to church and community. We go to different places for different purposes. And often when somebody says, hey, we're the one-stop shop, we can do it all, they might do it all, but some things they do quite well, and other things they do not as well, right? If you go to Costco, you need to walk through the whole place and it's gonna be an hour, right? Sometimes you can just get in and out of Safeway in 30 seconds. So part of the goal of having these three connections is recognizing these hopefully are serving and filling very different needs, and we don't expect that any one of these would be able to do all of the things that we're hoping to do. Does that get closer to answering your question, John?
A little bit. Does
Yeah.
that mean we're gonna do all of them?
So it means that,
Energy?
yeah. So does that mean we're going to do all of them? What it means is we're trying, in an ideal world, yes, we're going to do all of them. Do we live in an ideal world? Of course not. So we are going to kind of test the waters in different places and try to see which one starts moving and working, and then put our energy into, strengthening and building that, because we can't do everything. Certainly not as a starting point, right? And just say, oh, we'll do it all. No, we also have limits. So right now, the thing that's happening is the first one, right? The Reform Connection. What if that goes really well? My guess is what we'll find is we get some really meaningful connection to our Reformed identity, which is going to be really valuable for some of us and hopefully indirectly for all of us. But then there still will be other people in our community or other priorities within us, within our community, where people say, yeah, but it doesn't really scratch that itch. And so then we'll be looking and say, okay, we didn't ask Toward Canada to be everything for us. Let's find some people who want to put some energy into items B and C. So yes, hopefully we will do it all, but we're not going to go from 0 to whatever, 100% overnight, right? And it's going to take some time. Yeah, any other questions? Sorry, I'm looking at the clock. Any other questions or comments? We can come back to this as well. So I'm going to move on just because last time we went too long and I talked too much. So I'm trying to talk a little bit shorter, recognizing that if there are, we can always talk more with other questions. Okay. So doing this backwards has some advantages and some disadvantages. One of the advantages is that we're going to get through these really important things. One of the disadvantages is that maybe there's a little bit less context for what we're talking about. So we'll just get into it here with the internal structure pieces. I need to grab my notes here, sorry. That's not it. Come on. You would think I would put my pages in order, and I didn't. I'm sorry. There we go. So one of the things that we have experienced as a church is that we have lots of people with different experiences and different priorities. And I want to just quickly touch on what we're going to get into later. But I'm just going to touch on it now just for context. So I assume that all these words mean something to you, pre-modern, modern, and postmodern. These are like worldviews, right? Ways of seeing the world. And historically speaking, about 2/3 of the world has been in this pre-modern worldview. And the language is unfortunate because it makes it seem as though everybody's on a journey and that the more you progress, the further you go, and that the right side's better than the left side, as it were. But about 2/3 of the world is in this pre-modern camp, which really values community, collectivist culture, values history and tradition. And then about 1/3 of the world, so again, we're going back in time a little bit, is in this modern camp, which really values scientific learning and fact and has built strong institutions and is trying to make them last. So one of the values here is longevity and community. One of the values here is institutions and truth. And then, so if this was historically true, we've since, for the last 100 years or less, had a bunch of postmodern people come along and say, neither of these work for me. They really value individual individuals and experience. And so what we have seen, what massively across our world, what we've seen is, for starters, that all of those things are good values, right? No one would say, oh, you shouldn't value truth, or you shouldn't value longevity, or you shouldn't value your personal experience. They're good values, but they're not the same value, and often they're competing values. And we have seen that live its way out in our congregation as well. And so I've used this language in our ministries of up and in and out, right? And so, again, this is far too simplistic, but the primary value for these groups are upward, right? The worship. I want to be connected to not only just to my community of people here, but I want to be connected to the Christian tradition and to the God who is at the heart of our tradition. Modern people say we value institutions, we build something, we want to enjoy it together, right? So modern people, we like to sit in a room and feel like everybody's here, right? We're all in it together. And postmodern people are saying the world's a mess. I'm looking at my own experience, and the best hope that I have is to connect my experience to somebody else's experience, and to do good things through that connection. Those are quite different ways of interacting with the world. And what we've said is, as a council, right, we want to leverage our differences for strength. So we want to, these are our council priorities for 2026. If this has been historically, and again, I'm really oversimplifying here, but if this has been historically our kind of approach, that we're a more modernist church, focused on institution building, focused on telling the truth, even if it hurts, how do we make room for people who have different experiences or different world views, different expectations, right? And there's all kinds of ways to overlay ethnicity onto this too, or national identity or whatever, but we'll just leave it at that for now. So the first question is, as a Mosaic Council, what changes or focus or style or structure can we make to invite other ethnic leaders to join council, right? If we want to leverage our difference for strength, how do we actually do that well? So that people don't feel like, oh, if you want to come on council, you have to value what our church has always valued. No, how do we let people bring themselves and bring their values and bring their priorities to council, and carry those with them into the room so that God can lead us into new ways and places and areas of strength. So one of the other pieces is structure, trying to solidify a board structure where council oversees everything, but empowers and trusts people to do their work, their passion, their skill with some kind of accountability. And so associated with that is just rewriting our manuals and stuff. But again, those, so that the structure, right? Some of you have been here for a long time and you know the story, or you were in the room when there was 30 people on council and everything was debated and talked about, sometimes till, I don't know, midnight, or sometimes you had to go like this and get the cigarette smoke out of the air. Right, like that is one strong way of doing council. That's not the only way. There's lots of strengths to that. There's also weaknesses. Not everybody has the energy to debate every point of decision making until the wee hours of the morning. If you're on a salary and you can go in late, that works, right? If you've got an hourly job or a shift, you need to get up the next morning, it's not going to work. So there's all kinds of considerations why there's some value in saying, how do we have council oversee everything and work with pastors to lead everything, but not be responsible for everything? Because again, we have people who have different, if we have people who have different passions and different expertise and different views, one of the things it means is that no one person or even a big group is going to be able to do it all. So we want to help our church get started in different ways, or in different areas at different times. And what that requires, like I said in the sermon this morning, is getting people to try to define, right? Who am I giving myself to? In what way am I doing that? And how is that part of what the church is doing? Council then doesn't need to control that, but it does need to understand it and resource it and offer some accountability where it's needed. So the last two are two we've already talked about. Hire a young generation pastor and pursue these connections with other churches. So, yeah, the goal is, and just I said this last week too, council is talking with a few members in our church, but nobody has yet said, yes, I'll serve on council. And given the structure above, we're trying to have some volunteers serve in a wide variety of areas, not just have council do everything. Any questions or comments on that?
Adrian,
Yeah, Dan.
do you have an example of maybe going from or to wards that oversee but not responsible? So
Yeah, so what would be an example of trying to oversee ministry but not be responsible for it? I think there's, so council's not trying to reinvent the wheel. In a lot of ways, what we've done is try to see what's happening and what's working, and then just kind of lean into that. So one example in my mind would be, there was a time in history, I think, when our council set all the ministries and made sure, checked that everybody was leading them in the right way or that they had everything that they needed. Where we've had a lot of, I think, beautiful success over the last few years is we've had 3 different women's ministries that are serving different needs in our congregation. And council is aware of all of those 3 women's ministries. Council is doing our best, and probably certainly not perfectly, to try and resource those ministries and give them the thing that they need, but not to try to control it and say, well, you all need to, for example, you all need to do the same curriculum, or you all need to get together, or you all, whatever it would be, right? Just trying to trust that God is doing a good work in these 3 different areas, and that we can try and guide, right? So maybe it would be good for the leaders in these 3 different ladies' ministries to get together. Well, we can try and make that happen and check and see if that's a good, right? Might there be some learning between 3 or 6 ladies getting together? We'd have to see, right? It's not something we've done. But that would be one example. I think there would be other ones too, but I think there's a lot more kind of potential future examples, right? So another one would be the model that we have for staffing right now, right? So council, I'm responsible to council for my work. Council gets a report from me every month at our meeting. They can ask all the questions that they want. Sometimes there's a lot, sometimes there's very few, but what they don't do is try and tell me how to do my job, right? It might help me see that there are gaps, or, right, what have you thought about this? We try and do that together, and so that would, as I understand it, that's, for some of you, is different than it has been in the past, right? Where council at times, either council was more led by a strong pastor, or at other times, council was really the pastor was under the council. So we're trying to sort that out. And another example of that would be the young generation pastor, right? That council needs to be aware, when we hire this person, council's aware of what they're doing, kind of how things are going, but it's gonna be the pastor who works with Pastor Harrison and myself, and really has the responsibility to figure that out. As a team, as a person, and with the pastoral team, rather than council being directly involved in making sure that ministry happens in the best way. Any other questions or comments? All right. Okay. There was a lot more questions last week. We might be done early. And that would be just fine. Okay, so there's a couple notes here that I was intending to share. Just one is on this note, wanting to just spend a minute or two trying to, one thing, reminding everybody that the year-to-date budget is tracking similar to 2025. Last year, or last week and over the last few years, we've heard some concerns about our finances, and we're trying to make sure that we're reporting that in a good way. And so we're close to where we were last year. I think we're a little bit behind where we were last year. But I don't know, I'm looking at Joanne and Debbie. Is there I don't think council is especially worried about our financial situation. Is that fair?
That's probably fair, but
Okay.
it's early. I think you're speaking more of giving. We haven't done a full
Yes, I am. Thank you.
count of expenses, so.
Yeah, okay. So giving is on track to where it was last year, so we're grateful for that. We're getting our first quarter report on expenses and rental income and all those other things, getting that together now. This is why we need to leverage difference for strength, because I'm not the money person in our marriage, and I'm definitely not the money person in our church. Yeah.
Adrian, I'm sorry, I'm going back, could we go back a little bit to the board again? I think an elephant in the room is that we all know we would like more board members, because these guys are working way too hard and they have way too much responsibility, and same with our pastors. So people are being asked, but what are the reasons that people aren't willing to serve?
So I think there are people in our church who see the level of responsibility that council has quite differently. So do we all have too much responsibility? Well, someone needs to shoulder the responsibility to serve and to lead our congregation. So we all have there's however much responsibility, and I think what I hear you saying is it would be better if we spread it around with more people, right? The reason I want to push back on that a little bit is that on the one hand, I agree with you, right? It's always better. In lots of ways, it's better to have more. But the key thing is we want to have the right people. So what is not helpful, and I like pictures, they work in my mind, right? If you are on a canoe and you're all trying to row down the river, and you say, we're not getting very far, we need another person in the canoe to help us row. Well, if you get another person in the canoe and they don't row, you're actually behind. Now you just have more dead weight. And so from my view, the primary consideration for council is not how do we get more people, but how do we get the right people, right? How do we make sure that we can articulate our vision as best as we can, granted that it's imperfect, and that we can ask people to sort of to row in that direction, right? This is the direction we think we're going. We think God is leading us. We want to work with people who are also pursuing that direction. If we get somebody that's, worse than doing nothing would be somebody rowing in the different direction. Then we have all different kinds of challenges. So yes, on the one hand, our council members are doing a huge amount of work. They're doing an excellent job. They're, again, I use a bad analogy, they're making bricks without straw kind of thing, right? Like they're doing a whole lot. And I am very thankful for them, and I'm very thankful to work with them and with Pastor Harrison. Having said that, the right way out of it, again, is not just more people, but it's the right people. There's two reasons I give you why people are sort of, because I think it's an important question still, Ruth, right? So there's two reasons I would give you why people are not stepping up or saying no. One is that people have looked at what our church has been going through and what our council members have done, and they said, "Oh, that's a lot of work. I'm not sure I'm up for that." Right? Because it's not just our current council members who have been working their tails off and doing really good work, right? Our church has been through a number of big challenges. And so what it has meant to be on council for the last, let's say, 5 years, is it's meant stepping into a really challenging environment and a very challenging role, and people with very good intentions and very godly intentions are saying, I'm not sure I'm the right person to step into such a big responsibility. And I am very grateful for people who take that call seriously rather than just say, well, they said they needed someone, so sure, I've got a little bit of free time. So one of the things we're looking at with our structure, right, is saying if people can do a part, but not need to serve on council, that would be good, right? Because there is work to do, and we do need more people to do it. So things like finance committee, building and grounds committee, like the work of pastoral care elders, like there's all kinds of work that and responsibility that people could take on. That's not everything, right? But just the right part that works for them. So that's one concern and one reason. The other, I think, is that, and this is untested. So again, I'm staring at our council members here. They can make a cutting motion with their throats if they want me to stop. One of the things that I've observed is, right, if you, when you walk into a room, the first thing you do is look for somebody who looks like you, right? And for some of us, the way that someone looks like you is like gender, right? I don't want to be the only man in the room of all women. I have to do that sometimes as a pastor. It's kind of uncomfortable. Not because the women are mean, right? But just because it's hard being the only man in the room when it's all women. So that's true of everything, right? For some of us, it's ethnicity that really matters to us, or age that really matters to us, or whatever it is, right? It's like our kind of perspective, right? There's some more soft things where you're like, I kind of want to just see someone who feels like me in whatever way that is. And so when that's just whatever boring group dynamics that we're not here to talk about. But when anybody walks into our church, they immediately have a sense of, oh, this is the big group in the church, and I'm a minority. Or, oh, this is a big group in the church, and I fit right in because I'm a part of that group, right? And that doesn't mean they have a perfect, accurate understanding of our church. It just means that's how they feel when they walk into a room. So our church has historically been led by, council has been these kind of people, right? Who really value institutions, who value truth, who have prioritized all of this inward kind of ministry. That's who we've been, that's what we've seen. And when we look at some of these other things, right? So we put like hundreds of man hours into our ministries together every year, but we hired a worship director to work 10 hours a week, right? That says something about what we prioritize as a church, right? And then we have pastors whose primary role is to serve our church, but who don't we should also do outreach too, right? So we'll just give that to the pastors because they know what they're doing. So when we have this structure and priorities and values that we have because of who we are as a church, and that ends up working itself out at the council level too, right? So we're very strong in this area, and one of the things that means is that people who have passions in this area or in this area don't immediately feel like they walk into the room and say, oh, these are my people, right? It's kind of harder to be the first person who steps into the room. And one of the reasons, or that dynamic, which again, I'm probably already spent too long talking about, but that dynamic is one of the reasons why, as a council, we've said we want to try to ask that first question, right? How do we make room for other people to serve on council? Because so that's a very long answer to your question, but the second answer, Ruth, is that people haven't always felt like there's room for them on council. And it's not because people are mean, right? It's not because council's trying to get rid of people or trying to close the doors.
But what's changed? What's changed? We used to have councils, I'm not talking about 30 people. I mean, I don't know,
Yeah.
maybe there were 10 or whatever.
Right.
But, I mean, there's value in having people with different ideas. There's
Oh, absolutely.
value in having people discuss from different perspectives, right? I mean, just to have people around you who are all the same, that's not what and you just said that. You
Yeah,
don't,
absolutely.
that's not what any of us want. But there is value in having more people with more ideas.
Oh,
It gets messy, it gets harder sometimes, but you know, that's kind of part of cross-fertilization, right? of ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. Like there is value, right? And so one of the questions is how do we make sure that if we articulate that there is value in doing that, which I hear you say, and I think all of us would agree, how do we make sure that we communicate that value, right? And that we really make sure to listen more and not just disregard or set people aside or say, yeah, that's all really good. Why don't you do that? And the rest of us are going to focus on other things. Right? That's an unintentional way of minimizing people or devaluing people's priorities. So what's changed over the years, right? And I'll pick on you, Ruth, because I love you and I respect you, and you're the perfect example, right? One of the things that has changed is that you're not married to the pastor anymore, right? And I mean that with all love and respect, and I want to honor Mike and his memory. But that is one of the things that has changed, right? You all used to, like those of you who are seniors, used to have a pastor who was a peer, and now you don't, right? Now you have Pastor Harrison, who is age-wise close to some of you, but ethnically and his perspectively quite different from those of you who are seniors. And then you have me, who's this age of some of your grandchildren, right? So that actually is a huge change about how you feel, how you listen, how you interact with our church. That's a huge difference. And it's not about I feel disrespected or it's none of that stuff, right? It's just we are who we are and we bring what we bring, and it's different having a pastor, having a council who are younger than you, right? And one of the places where we've gotten caught is with some of this what I've called like a game of chicken, right? So everybody's kind of waiting and watching for everybody else to make the first move, right? And some of us know the story of our church, and we would say, oh, we've done it, we did it before, we took our turn, right? But others are still looking at the majority group in the middle, and they're saying, well, that's the big group of people. I wouldn't want to step on their toes. I don't want to, right? They have some good reasons for doing what they're doing. I wouldn't want to get in the way. And so that like game of chicken, right? Everybody waiting for everybody else to make the first move. That's one of the things that's changed as well. Anyway, so there's always more to say, but I'll stop there. Any other comments or questions? All right. And it is, thank you, Ruth, for that. And it is okay to go back, right? Like we're moving pretty quickly, and we're not going to cover everything well today. And so, so there always are, I hope, right? If this was the end of it, and we just said, oh, we're done, that would be too bad. There's a whole lot more to talk about to decide. Yeah, Tammy.
I just want to push back gently.
Sure.
I just want to push back gently on your comment about everyone's playing chicken right now. Talking to a number of people in our congregation, I feel it's not about people waiting for others to make the first move and we'll jump on board. I think there's a high level of discernment going on right now, and I think people are searching in their hearts in a really real way as to where God is leading them, what their purpose is here, what is the direction our church is moving in. And I feel that people in the church, there's a lot of prayer going on as to where they best fit right now. So I don't think it's a game of chicken. I think there's a lot of discerning going on in the background with a number of members who are here or were here last week. And they're just trying to figure out what their piece in the puzzle is right now.
No, thank you. I will take that. I think, of course, I think that's right. Yeah, I think a lot of people are really, I'm not trying to make light of the situation, right, and say, oh, it's all just a game. I agree with you. People are really seriously searching, right? And some of that searching means waiting and watching and seeing who makes the move first or what things pan out to be. That's where the chicken analogy comes from. But I don't say that by trying to minimize, right? It is very real work and very important work for each of us as individuals, for couples, for people to really look before the Lord, or yeah, stand before God, look at our church and say, okay, yeah, do I fit? If so, how and where? So yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Quick question.
Yeah, sure.
Can you give us a bit of an update on the younger generations pastor?
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah.
Either said or
Yeah.
is in the
Yeah, can you give,
replay thing that it's posted various places. Yeah, just maybe who's on the committee, what you're looking for, what you're hoping for, and all that.
can you give us, so I'm looking for my phone. That's what oh, it's recording me right now. Sorry. An update on the younger generations pastor, yeah. So the reason I'm looking for my phone is because there's a WhatsApp group that's got everybody listed on the team, and off the top of my head is full of other things right now, but I'll do my best, and I'll ask Debbie to, can you do it off the top of your head, Debbie?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I'm gonna pass it to Debbie then, so that I don't miss anybody.
Okay, so it's me. Pastor Adrian is there, a sort of admin support. Daniel Cho, Heidi Visser's our youth rep, Marianne Cranadonk, and Linda Matz are on, and Tom Curry are all on the committee. And so far what we have done is posted it. That is a big step. And we've talked about, we've sort of wish casted who we're looking for. And then we hope that we get some candidates that are going to represent those, most of those things that we want. We've had Daniel and Heidi talk to the youth about stuff that they're looking for. And those things kind of move towards eventually asking interview questions and sort of figuring out who would be the best person for the job. So that sort of, those are future things. So right now we're just waiting for the applications to come in. And we really only have one so far. So I think, Adrian, you posted those this week. So hopefully we'll get more soon. And where did you post them? Indeed and
I can answer that.
Christian Courier?
Yeah, so we posted them in a number of university job boards, so King's and Ambrose and St. Mary's and Alberta Bible College, I think. And then we also posted on Christian Courier on the online and in their
And in
newsletter.
1 or 2 sentences, what are we looking for?
Yeah, so I think we're looking for someone who has a passion for connecting our generations, so especially children, youth, young adults, and then someone who has experience working across generations and across cultures, either living and or working in across generations and across cultures. Any other questions or comments? All right. Okay. Just gonna get this straight. So before we close then today, it's been about just about an hour. I want to just talk a little bit more about these 3 words that I've put on the board, because one of the things that I believe, to a fault, is that more understanding always helps us move better. And sometimes my wife just tells me okay, you said it enough, Adrian, you can stop talking now. So today might be one of those days, but it'll just be the 2 of us in the car ride home, so I'll update you later. So again, I don't think these labels are especially helpful, but I do think there's no point making up new labels because these are in the water. Everybody knows what you're talking about. So, so some of these different values, I just want to share briefly with you, invite you to think where you are, and wonder at the goodness of where others are. one of the things that we always find whenever we meet people who are different from us, whether that's, I mean, literally every person is different from us. It's just a question of degree, right? Some people feel different but similar. Some people feel quite different in lots of ways. So, so one of the ways that we grow is by taking God's word and applying it to our own lives and actually beginning to do what we think God is calling us to do. Another way that we grow is by learning about our world and learning about the people who are around us. And then when we try and help each other, work together, learn from each other, serve each other, or be served by each other, when we understand each other better, we tend to hurt each other less, right? Maybe that's a very positive, rosy picture, but I hope it's at least partially accurate. So that's the purpose of just talking about this. So I want to just think through some of these categories, right? So truth, knowledge, perspective, evidence, and the church value. And we'll just spend, that's 30, so we'll spend maybe 10 or 15 minutes on this and then we'll wrap up. And I'll give you time for more questions too if there are some. So when it comes to truth, what's real and most important, right? There's people in our world, if I'm right, it's about 2/3 of our world, where people say, well, what's true is what our elders tell us, what our community tells us, and what tradition tells us. That's what's true, that's what's most important. And then there's modern people who say, well, what's true is what we decide, what we can prove. So science is true because we can prove that atoms exist and molecules exist, right? We've proven this. And postmodern people would say, well, what's true, what's real, what's important is what I experience to be the case. It's very easy to get overwhelmed by all the stuff going on in our world. And so what's actually real and important, well, that's stuff that's a whole lot closer into me, right? And so you're not gonna have a whole lot of science deniers in the postmodern crowd. You're likewise not gonna have a whole lot of people who say, oh, it doesn't matter what's come before. But their priority is their own personal experience. What they see, what they experience to be important and kind of within their sphere of influence. So all three of those definitions of truth, right, are what's real and what's important. They're all different. They're not necessarily in conflict, but they do create tension if we're unaware of them, right? Because what often happens is someone will say something, right? And then the natural reaction is, what do you mean? How can you possibly think that, right? And whether we say that or not, whether we just feel that in our bones, we might express it in a whole lot of different ways. But again, the purpose of trying to understand some of this stuff is to recognize, right, that a lot of these things are values held by God's people all around the world, and God is bringing all of his people from everywhere to Calgary. I didn't grow up in Calgary. Most of us didn't grow up and live in Calgary, right? Some of you did. Some of you have lived here your whole lives, but the majority of people who live in Calgary have come from somewhere else, somewhere close, somewhere far. But or at least I'll say the majority of people in our church. I'm not a statistician. I don't actually know Calgary, so I don't want to misrepresent our city. Anyway, so again, when it comes to knowledge, right? What can we know? So again, like pre-modern people would say, well, they're the spiritual world and the physical world overlap. Everything is spiritual. Most of it is outside of our control. Knowledge helps us navigate life and community in a world that's outside our control and uncertain. Modernist people would say, what can we know? Well, everything's material and can be studied. Knowledge helps us understand, science helps us understand what we can know. And we want to be able to measure it and describe it and define it. And then again, postmodern people, everything is complicated. A couple people got quite upset with me last year because we kept saying everything's complicated. Knowledge is what you need to work through a given situation. So again, all three of those are quite different views of what knowledge is and what it's good for and what you can know. And one of the very interesting things to me is, well, two things. One, that these definitions are not necessarily mutually exclusive. Sometimes people it's a bit of a continuum and people exist somewhere in the middle, right? Between these two camps or even between these two camps. Or obviously any permutation is possible. What's quite interesting is sometimes the horseshoe effect, where the pre-modern, again, I don't love these descriptors, but the pre-modern and postmodern folks end up seeing the world in ways that are very similar, but ways that are quite different from modernist people. So one of the stories I'll tell, or the analogies I'll give is there's a philosopher at the University of Toronto who wrote a impenetrably thick book. It's like 900 pages. And I tried anyway to read it, but one of the things that he talks about, he says in Europe in the 1400s and 1500s, so we're kind of back here before the Enlightenment, which led to modernism. So in Europe in the 14 and 1500s, it was impossible for people to conceive of playing a video game or watching a horror movie. And it wasn't a technological issue. It was the fact that they believed that angels and demons were everywhere. And if your worldview means that angels and demons are everywhere, what you don't need to do is go scare yourself at a movie, right? Life is scary enough. You don't need to go watch a movie to scare yourself or play a video game to scare yourself. The whole world is spiritual. And so in that context, it's very difficult to think about not going to church. Because if everything is spiritual, one of the things the church does is it offers you protection from those spiritual realities. It makes no difference whether what you think or whether you believe, right? Let's not be relativists and say, oh, demons only exist if I believe they exist, right? The church is offering you protection. So why would you go out on your own? It's a big, bad world out there. That way of thinking about the church doesn't really make sense to modernist people who just want to know for a fact whether angels are real or not, and they can't measure them and didn't see one, so it seems like other things are more important. And sometimes other things are more important. But what we find with postmodern people is that you've all heard this terminology, right? Oh, I'm spiritual but not religious, right? So what they actually recognize is what has been true for pre-modern people all along, that the world is very spiritual, but they don't interact with the world in the same way that pre-modern people do. So all of these kind of things, there's all kinds of permutations and good reasons for people moving through the world as they do, making the decisions that they do. It doesn't mean that people always do what's right. It means that usually people have a good reason for thinking what they think, for moving how they move, and it's not as simple as just saying, well, you should change your mind. That doesn't work for any of us. As I said in the sermon this morning, God's approach to us is not to say, well, you should just live differently, right? That's what the law says, actually. The law tells us all the things that we need to do. God gives himself to us. And so in this world where people are living and seeing the world very differently and interacting in very different ways, one of the best things that we can do is take a little bit of understanding and then give ourselves to someone, right? And we need, to your very good comment, right? We need discernment and we need the Spirit to decide, who should I give myself to? Where should I give myself? How should I do that, right? And we need the community to do that as well. I want to just, I said we'd be done by 45 and we're rapidly approaching that, so I'm just going to jump down to the bottom of this page before we close the church value bit. Because we touched on this with the up and in and out thing, but I want to maybe wrap things up there. So again, for people for this kind of worldview, with a pre-modern worldview, right? The sentence would be, life is uncertain, or the question is, what's the best about being the part of God's people? For pre-modern, for that worldview, the answer is, well, life is uncertain and challenging. I want to connect with God, and I want to connect with my tradition. With a bigger community, not meaning the individuals here, meaning the history of the church, right? The Apostles' Creed comes out of a pre-modern context. I believe in the Holy Catholic Church. Catholic not meaning Roman Catholic, Catholic meaning universal, right? Being a part of that church, worshiping God, that's a huge value. But for modern people, they're like, who care about institutions, right? What do you mean the Catholic Church? We're not a part of the Catholic Church, right? Because the unity that these people think about is a more institutional unity. And the value that they have is that community value. In a world with many divisions, I value spending time with those who believe and live as I do. And then lastly, the postmodern folks. And again, you see a little bit of that horseshoe effect maybe, right? Life is very uncertain. In a world of many uncertainties, these people are trying to build certainty and have succeeded in lots of beautiful ways. But postmodern people would say, in a world of many uncertainties, I want to make a difference and or model the best story, the best way to my peers, to the people around me, whatever they believe, or wherever they are, or wherever they are in what they think. And so again, where I want to close is again with Scripture to remind us that Jesus says, right, I am the way and the truth and the life. We get to start, we being God's people, we get to start wherever we are. What we don't get to do is say, no, Jesus is the truth, and the truth is more important than the way. Or I'll say, oh, Jesus is the way, and the truth doesn't matter. No, Jesus says that he is all of these things. And so as a congregation, one of the best ways that we could try to pursue a life of discipleship and pursue the way of Jesus is to try and make room for people whose approach is, right, I really value the life of Jesus and the history of his life and the tradition that followed out of that. I really value the truth of Jesus, the way that he reframes our understanding of the world and gives us eyes to see what is unseen. I really value the way of Jesus, the way that he moves in the world, how he is with people, who he makes room for, and who he prioritizes and deprioritizes in the context of his day. That's what we're trying to do. But again, here we are, right? We can talk all day about our goals and our intentions and our purposes, but we are who we are, and God is continuing to lead us and guide us, and we're continuing to try in the best of our ability to follow. And so we will see. We'll see where he leads and how we follow. All right, that's enough from me. Any other final kind of comments or questions? Yeah, take it, man.
You know, this is more of a kind of a practical thing, but like you mentioned about the new website, which I think is a great idea, and you know the importance of letting people know what's happening in this church. So websites are, the front door, right? But how about having to think about this whole issue of signage? And I sent you an email on it, but when people come past the church over here, like we don't have any signage. Now this may seem like a minor thing, and I shouldn't bring it up at the end of this session, okay? But like you get all this traffic going past the avenue over here, and we don't have a sign. The only time we have a sign up is during Stampede, but for the rest we don't have a sign. So if we had a sign there, just saying, okay, this is River Park Church, we're a Christian church, Christian Mosaic church, I think people would really take notice of something like that, because the only sign we have right now is up sort of hid by these bushes, you see. So just something to think about, okay?
Yeah, sorry, you're putting me on the spot here because I did not respond to your email, and I'm sorry. But there's good news, Takeo. So this is on me, not on you. Like you're right, it would be so two things. One, that you're right, it would be good to have a sign on 38 Ave, and we are actually working on that right now. So we want to get our old sign is old in a number of ways. It's physically old, but it also has our old logo on it. And so we're going to get that put a vinyl wrap on it, so that it'll just be it'll look like a new sign, even though it's still the old board behind. And then I think just this past week filed the permits with the city to essentially duplicate that sign. So it's not going to be like fancy or have lights or whatever, but it'll just be the same kind of the thing that you're talking about, right? Have our new logo, have a sense of our vision, and invite everybody. So it's a very good idea. I'm sorry I didn't reply to your email, but we're on it. Our staff is doing a good job working on that, Gina and Jamie especially, or in particular in that area. So that's good. Yeah, so Gina and Jamie had this idea of like putting like hooks or whatever on the bottom so that we can attach like special announcements to it, like when there's Stampede or when there's a Christmas concert or whatever. So yeah, they're thinking through those things. Anyway, so it is on. It's a good idea. But again, I want to challenge all of us, right, to say what's good about a sign is it lets everybody know that we're here. And it'd be good that they know that we're here. But again, when we look at God didn't just stick out a sign, right, and say, hey, this is the way to heaven. He came to us. And so we're going to do the sign. It's a good thing. But again, the challenge for all of us, right, is if we're joining God, then we're sent, right? And we're going and we're sharing the good news, not just waiting for people to come to us, although we certainly do hope that God will bring more. So I'm going to just wrap us up there. If there are other questions, of course, we're not done with we're never done with the conversation. Did you want to? Sure. Go for it.
This is just real quick. I just wanted to comment with what Takeo said, like with the signs outside the church. So before, when I used to go to work riding the bus, I ride bus 13 or 22, or always pass by the church, 38 Ave. So I see this church before I started going here. So I see this church, like I see like the big cross, the white cross. So I said, oh, this is a Christian church. And then never thought that that God will bring me to this church and meet my beautiful wife. So yeah, I think I really agree that it'll really help. Like besides, like if you're meant to be here or yeah.
No, it's thank you, Marvelous, and I really like how you snuck in there your beautiful wife. So congratulations. It's 1 week. 2 weeks, sorry, time flies. Yeah, congratulations to both of you. Well, let's close in prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for the passion that is here, for the people who are here, for your Spirit who is here. God, even as we talk about significant things and heavy things, we also speak in hope because we are trying our best to follow you. And we know that you value us as we are, that you sanctify our efforts, and that you continue to walk with us and to lead us. And so as we close today, we just thank you for being with us, for coming to us, and we look to you in trust and hope for the future, that as individuals and as a church, you will be with us, you will lead us, and you will send us to the right people, in the right places, in the right ways, at the right time. So Lord, give us open minds and hearts, first of all, to you and to what you continue to say to us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful dry afternoon.